Mum's the word. Okay, I'm recording again. And then, so let me make you, Ellen, share, co-host again.
Sure.
And then we go, okay. Okay.
Oh, what a shame.
Okay. So let's see if this works. Here we are. Now you let me know if you can see that. This, I think, is where we ended.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank
Yes.
you. That's where we ended. Okay.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right. No worries. So, yeah, maybe a beaver cut through the line somewhere. So, but the point I was making really is that there are often things to see in the ravines that are not necessarily furry animals directly, but they're evidence, and that's a nice feeling too. So now, sometimes, if we're lucky, we may see nature far away as well. Deer are obviously shy animals, but sometimes we can see them in the ravines. Now, deer incidentally love to eat trilliums, so those early spring flowers that come up early when there's not much else green, they get munched preferentially. So if we have too many deer in an ecosystem like the ravine system, our trilliums tend to dwindle and may disappear altogether. So it's one of those, those interesting interactions. And obviously there are interactions of every kind. And we know that trees and squirrels need each other, and there are so many different mutual needs. But an interesting reality is that people need nature too. We really do need it. Toronto ravines let us enjoy nature in our everyday lives. Often we can walk from our homes to a ravine or get there by TTC. And it's really important for our mental health. Increasingly, we're seeing even medical doctors issuing nature prescriptions. In other words, saying, you should get out for a walk a couple times a week. It'll do you good. Get out into nature. And many studies have been done and have been compiled showing that spending time in nature can make us feel more relaxed. It reduces stress levels. It gives us more energy, makes us more creative, and improves sleep. So all of those elements are really important. Ravines also connect us with the past. Our ravines are much, much older than the city itself. So this steep quarried hillside at the brickworks, it may not look like much in the photo, but it actually offers an exciting window into the deep, deep past. In fact, this north slope is so important that it has been named a World Heritage UNESCO site. The site was made famous by Toronto geologist A.P. Coleman, who discovered that the quarry wall showed a complete record of the past 130,000 years. It also showed that our area has been covered by glaciers, not just once, but several times. So, and that the climate warmed up considerably in between those two ice ages. And that was quite a remarkable thing to discover, because often a second ice age will wipe out any evidence that was left beforehand. And so to have a record in the geology that shows that interglacial period, that was very exciting to geologists. And this is sort of a graphic depiction of what was observed when geologists examined that quarry slope. And another thing that Coleman discovered at the very bottom of that, in the bottom geologic layer, was the tooth of a giant beaver in the very oldest layers. So there were giant beavers living in this area, weighing about 200 pounds, about the size of a beaver, living here 130,000 years ago. Now, of course, they didn't live here all by themselves. There was a whole ecosystem. There were bison, there were giant bears. And so it was a whole world that is lost now, but that we have a record for. and that we can visit virtually in downtown Toronto. And here is a depiction of that ancient beaver skull to give you a sense of the size compared to a modern beaver. Now, ravines are also important to Indigenous groups. For thousands of years, these lands have been the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Indigenous peoples had a strong relationship with the land and the rivers north of Lake Ontario. They farmed many crops where the soil was good, and the soil was good in a lot of places. And they cared for trees that provided nuts, fruit, and woods of various kinds. And walnuts were one of the types of trees that they favored and that they tended. For Indigenous nations, local rivers also connected their trails and their trade routes. They fished rivers such as the Don River for salmon and other fish, and they hunted the marshlands around the river mouths like Ashbridges Bay for duck, muskrat, and deer. So this was a really good land. Now we know that, of course, in the 1800s, European settlers began to build many lumber mills along the Humber River. Forests of white pine were mostly cut down. And today, what we have on the Humber River, for example, are the remnants of an old mill and the old mill bridge that are reminders of that time. In the 19th century, many more mills were built along the Humber and Don rivers. The mills used water power to saw logs, make paper, grind grain, and so the ravines became major industrial areas. In fact, a very large brick factory and a quarry were built in the Don Valley because really good clay was found right there. And at one time, the Don Valley Brickworks supplied most of the bricks for the buildings in Toronto. At one point, about 100 years ago, this was the largest brick factory on the continent. Many men worked there. The brickworks finally closed in the 1980s, and they left behind the factory buildings, extensive areas of rubble, and a huge deep hole. Meanwhile, on another valley in the Don Valley, Sun Valley, a garbage dump was established in the 1950s, and through the 1960s, it received hundreds of truckloads of garbage a day. In some spots, the garbage was 25 meters deep. So there were a lot of sites on our ravines that were treated that way. Back to that large hole at the old brickworks, a few people had a vision that really this site should be restored. And Evergreen formed a partnership with the city, with the Toronto Region Conservation Authority, and with philanthropists too. And the quarry hole was filled in over time. Among other things, the Scotia Plaza excavation, which produced an enormous amount of underground excavate, was used to fill in this quarry. And as a result of that vision and all that hard work and collaboration, the brickworks have been cleaned up and they are now really beautiful again, restored to nature. There are snapping turtles in these wetlands and beavers. So we really are the beneficiaries of that vision. Toronto ravines still need a lot of help though. The city continues to grow really quickly, and projects like roads, sewers, and public transit often run right through the ravines because that is the route of least resistance, you could say. People don't live there. And here's just one current example. In East Toronto, Metrolinx is expanding rail service for commuters. And of course, that's an important and laudable goal. The challenge is, though, that in order to produce a retaining wall, hundreds of trees in this ravine will be cut down. And people who live nearby want to save those trees. They've put ribbons around them in order to depict how much damage will be caused by this construction. And the neighbors are asking for a construction plan that doesn't destroy so much of the ravine. But this is really just one example. In a city our size, there are challenges for the ravine system almost everywhere you look in terms of infrastructure, building, and maintenance. Another challenge that we find across the ravine system is erosion, because the ravines are in many places used so well and they are quite steep. The paths just become eroded. The plants can't grow there anymore. The eroded bare dirt washes down the hillsides and the trees' roots become exposed. And so the trees begin to fail and it becomes a vicious cycle. So eroded paths are a problem right across the city. Litter is another perennial problem in our ravines. Plastic, we know, sticks around for a very, very long time, even though it may break down into little bits. And so tiny bits of plastic are now everywhere in our rivers and lakes. As well, we have new types of weedy plants that have been introduced from Europe and Asia, and they can quickly take over vast areas of ravine land because the native insects and the native wildlife just prefer to eat something else. And so Toronto has many kinds of invasive weeds, whether it's buckthorn or European common reed or Japanese knotweed. So garlic mustard is just one example, unfortunately. Dogs. The city has a lot of dogs. And dogs running off their leashes, they will scare birds, as I mentioned, and other wildlife. But they can also, just by running through the undergrowth, they can spread the seeds of those invasive weeds in their paws and in their fur. And so that contributes to the weeds being spread even faster. Toronto has at least 230,000 dogs. And with the pandemic, for example, we know that many people have bought pandemic puppies, so to speak. And of course, people need pets. They're important companions, but it's more the way that the dogs are exercised and allowed to roam free in the ravines that is the challenge. Toronto uses a lot of road salt in the winter, and that's terrible for trees and for other plants. So salt is also bad for fish, frogs, and all the aquatic insects that have their larval stages in the creeks and rivers. And we know that the tonnages of road salt that the city uses are just stupendous. So all in all, the people who have studied ravines have been telling city managers for quite some time about all these problems and the neglect and the challenges. And the message was clear that the ravines need help. And the weeds that invaded the ravines, they were a sign that the city had to act. So to address all that public concern, city managers wrote a strategy and they promised that things would change. Of course, money is going to be needed to bring the ravines back to health. And so money has been promised and there's hope that it will really start flowing. And we can all get involved to help, to speak to our counselors about that, and also to be volunteers where we see the value for that. Where we can start really is by getting to know our ravines, especially the ones near where we live. And often the easiest way to do that is to go to the City of Toronto website and search for walking, cycling, hiking. And what you'll find there is descriptions of some of the more popular trails and where they start. And you'll also see maps of the city, the east and the west. And this is an area that's around Manor Road United and the Happy Face is sort of roughly where the church is. So you get a sense of all those brown lines are the ravine trails that are close by. But the whole city has them. Another good way to discover the ravines is to come on a guided walk with the Toronto Field Naturalists. In normal years, the Toronto Field Naturalists runs over 140 guided walks all over Toronto's ravine system. Our walks are free to our members, and visitors can come too. And we have walks in winter months as well. We run them all through the season. During the pandemic, of course, we had to shut down our walks, and they're shut at this time. But once public health rules allow, we will go back to leading small groups, about 10 or less, and everyone will be wearing masks. So do check our website to find out when our walks begin again, because we can't say for sure when that will be. Our volunteer guides can tell you all about the plants and the animals and the history of the ravines. And we can tell you about the odd plants like Jack in the Pulpit that you'll see in the spring in some areas. And we'll also help to make you alert to areas, patches of poison ivy, and keep you out of those areas. Our volunteers also work with the city and other groups to control invasive weeds. And here you see the European common weed in the background. It's a particularly difficult one to control. It needs specialized help. And so we don't do this in isolation. We do this very much in partnership with city staff. Our members also help clean up garbage in the ravines. And of course, there's many, probably close to 100 different volunteer groups who help to maintain garbage control in the ravines. And our volunteers also work with the city to plant native trees and other plants. We offer programs for kids as well. Kids are very important to us, and so we've always run a junior naturalist program. And in fact, Robert Bateman, who is one of Canada's best known artists, wildlife artists, he was in his youth a student with the junior naturalists of TFN, and later became an instructor. And he felt that it helped to form him and his passion. And so we never know who might be coming through as a kid and will become a passionate lover of nature as they grow up. TFN has been around for almost 100 years now, and we've always seen our mission as connecting people with nature in the Toronto area. Today, the work of the Toronto Field Naturalists is more important than ever, and we are all still just volunteers. We have no staff. And you can find more about us at our website, as I said, and there's our website. And do consider becoming a member, especially at this time of year, where you get almost 15 months worth of membership if you join around this time of year. So it's a bargain as well as being a really good investment in nature. In the meantime, if you explore Toronto's ravines on your own, just keep in mind that you want to stay on the trails and take your litter out and keep your dog on a leash. And that will go a long way to being gentle on our ravine systems. So we really do hope that our volunteer walk leaders will soon be able to show you some of Toronto's wonderful ravines. And so now I'm happy to chat and take questions and comments and observations. This is often where I learn most of all is in the conversation with others. So these have all been volunteer photographers who contributed here. And so we have a lot of photographers who help us. So thanks very much. And I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and then
Well, thank you, Ellen. If people want to turn on their videos, and what we can do, we can ask questions, but probably the easiest thing to do, we'll put up hands, and we'll try to do our best. And I see Debbie has her hand up, and we'll try to keep track of those hands. And so, and then 1 second, Debbie, well, we start with Debbie, and then Peter. Okay.
Are you looking for volunteers for your organization? Because I'm up in Black Creek, Grand Ravine. I go down there every day. I have a sanctuary down there, and it's just, I'll tell you, at this time of the year, when I whistle for the cats, the birds whistle back. It's so divine. It's just beautiful. And since the pandemic hit, It's been absolutely wonderful because I've been living here for almost 14 years and I've finally see people walking down in this ravine. They
So what's
have to get over the issue of Jane and Finch, but it's just absolutely beautiful down there.
what's the word on that, Ellen, for Debbie?
We definitely, now, of course, at the moment, the challenge is that our volunteers, just like everybody else, we have to be really super careful. So we're not using volunteers at the moment, not hands-on volunteers. We don't have any sort of cleanups that are planned for the moment for April, but you know, we just have to wait until everybody's, or until enough people are vaccinated.
Okay. So what I meant, okay, I guess by a volunteer is, well, I talk to people when I'm down there. I take them on little walks. You know what I mean? We're, of course, socially distanced. And I'm able to point out different areas in the ravine where they should go see. May I share my screen for a second?
We'll give you one's sharing because we have a lot of other people who have questions. So okay,
Okay.
Sure. Okay. And we have Anne too. Okay, 1 second. So we have Peter, then Anne. Okay.
I've only got about 2 minutes because I have to run. I am at work. But, I just wanted to say thank you so much. That was very, very interesting. I've had the pleasure of exploring the Don Valley for years and years and years and years. I lived there. I played in behind the brickworks as a child and ran up and down all the ravine hills. What I find so wonderful about this city is I just a few years ago moved to Etobicoke. And so now I have a whole new wonderful place to explore with the Etobicoke Creek system and the Humber River system. And it's just really amazing. And I'm really glad that there is a Toronto naturalist or natural, what is it? The Toronto Field Naturalists.
Yeah.
Wonderful that that there is this group that's kind of looking after these wonderful places that are often hidden gems. There's a lot of people who don't even know how wonderful the ravine systems are, and there's a group of us actually that I met through golfing east of the city. And we've been doing similar things, exploring all the places like Petticoat Creek and the Rouge Valley and all the wonderful places just east of Toronto. So there just is so much to explore. I don't know if I'm ever going to get through all of the ravines.
Yes.
But thank you.
It's always so unpredictable. It's the serendipity of it, because when you have a dozen people who go out together, you never know who's got the expertise or who's got the sharpest eyes, and everybody learns from everybody. So, you know, I think that's really the joy of it often, is that, I mean, I feel myself, I'm a lifelong beginner. You know, I'm not a good bird, or I'm really, you know, I'm just blown away by whatever it is I discover that day. And that's what happens on these real life walks. And
well,
that's
I'm also a mushroom hunter. And it's amazing how much edible mushrooms there are in these ravine systems. There's a lot of them. They're really good.
Okay, so we want to allow for more questions too. Peter, you had a question too.
I had to step away, so hopefully you haven't covered this while I was gone. Can you talk about the number of creeks that are covered over in the ravine system, why they are? Is there any plans to uncover them?
Right. Well, there's a whole group that, in fact, many years ago was in a way spawned by the Toronto Field Naturalists, called Lost Rivers. And I encourage you to check them out.
I have seen that, yes.
Yeah, because in a way we partner often, we share group walks and so forth. So we have a long history of working together. And they feature that reality that Garrison Creek, Tattle Creek, Oh, there's so many of
There's
them.
Yellow Creek, Mud
Yellow
Creek
Creek.
in
Yes,
my area. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that they were often buried, well, because the civil engineers of the time thought that that would be for the best, you know, that they were smelly, they had become smelly open sewers. And of course, there's this long standing history that in older urban centers, before we had sewage treatment plants, you really did have sewage going, you know, through the creek. So it was, you know, keep your kids away from them. And I think it's very hard to undo that. It's a challenge for sure. But it's something for us to keep in mind that it was a mistake and we don't want to repeat it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We do have other questions. So Gary.
I live on Lawrence Avenue East in Scarborough, and our property abuts Thompson Park. And occasionally we see the deer. I was wondering, do you have any idea what the deer population is in the ravines in Toronto?
No, I don't. It's a great question, but I think it's healthy. And you know, I think that they find that, I would be surprised really whether there are many coyotes that could take down an adult deer. They could handle the fawns, of course, and I suppose that's how their population is kept in check. Yeah. So I know that in other places in Southern Ontario, for lack of real predator control, deer populations have really almost become overwhelming. And so, you know, we're no longer in a wilderness, so we do have to manage everything. And I don't think we're going to be seeing hunting in the city. But
Okay, so what are we doing about the coyotes? I mean,
well,
okay, I know they've taken down 3 deer because I've seen the carcasses,
Mhm.
and they weren't fawns, they were actual deers. And do you think they could start eating the raccoons?
Wouldn't that be nice? I think you're way too smart. No, well, I'm joking, of course, but you know, raccoons are super smart. And
Yeah.
and the funny thing is that there's someone who has done extensive tracking of raccoon populations around parks like High Park, for example, to see, you know, where do these raccoons live? Well, it turns out that the density is much, much higher in people's backyards and in around people's homes, because of course that's where the garbage is, that's where the food is. And so why would they live in a park? Like, there's not nearly enough food for them.
Well, no, except for when you feed the cats. The raccoons come every night, and I
Yes.
have to make sure the cats come down, you know, while I'm there so that they at least get some of the food. But the raccoons keep taking the dishes. You know what I mean? And it's like last year they brought the dishes back. So I'm waiting for them to see if they'll bring them back again this year. It's craziness.
Aren't they polite? Do we have any other questions from people? No. Well, I would say Ellen has been remarkable. And, you know, it's definitely we have 1,000 questions. I wanted to ask, what was the temperatures between the interglacial period? Maybe that we have time for that one question.
Well, it was warmer than it is today.
Okay.
It is warmer than it is now. So it got quite warm, and there were, you know, there were things that you would see quite a bit south of us, tree species and so on. And so that's a fascinating thing to keep in mind, is that our climate does fluctuate over long periods of time. So I do just want to say that I'm happy to give this talk in other venues. So if you know of ratepayers groups or other groups across the city, I'm happy to reach out to them. And you know, we want the Toronto Field Naturalists to be open and available to people right across the city. In the Black Creek area, for example, definitely. There are lots of communities that live quite close to the ravines. And as you say, Debbie, they aren't familiar with them. They're worried that they're a little bit, scary place. And that's a shame, because they really should be there for everybody.
So Ellen, you now have about
encouraging people to go down there because it's just beautiful.
So Ellen, you now have another 14 disciples to call, but we'll spread the word. Okay.
Okay, so the name of your organization is Toronto Naturalists?
Toronto Field Naturalists.
Field, okay. I'll look you up.
Thank you, Ellen. It's been remarkable.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you, Ellen.
So don't leave, everybody. We have now part 2, and just to take a stretch, sit up and down and stretch a bit, and we have over to now. Do you want to introduce our next speaker, who's actually going to cook and tempt us with other things? Yes.
Yes, our next guest is Chef Mia de Alla. She's the Executive Pastry Chef at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. So she is going to tell us about hot cross buns, how to make them, all you need to know. So Mia.
Okay, Mia, you may want to change the orientation of your screen. It looks like you're standing on the side of a building, but sorry. There's a way to do that in the Zoom room. Oh, there we go. Okay, wonderful. Okay, I'm just going to highlight you too. I'll put you on spotlight so we can see a bit better. That's good. Okay. All right, there's Mia. Okay, good. And you got to unmute. There we go. Okay. Yeah, Mia's. Oh, and I was going to show, before I forget, I was going to show the YouTube about the history of hot cross buns. So bear with me as I line that up. And here we go. 1 second. There it is. I want to give it people. Oh, 1 second. There. Okay. And there we are. Share screen. Just reminded me. Okay. So hot cross buns have been around us for a couple of centuries, but here's a bit of history from YouTube.
Buns. This is an original Victorian recipe, although we can date hot cross bun recipes right back to the medieval period. Now, of course, we know hot cross buns are made around Easter, along with things like simnel cake. There are a lot of traditional food associated with festivals, but the one we most associate with Easter is probably hot cross buns. Now, hot cross buns have had many different recipes over the years, but they've always been very popular. The reason we actually made hot cross buns is to eat for breakfast on Good Friday. And actually, the name of them, first of all, was Good Friday buns, or cross buns. They got the name hot cross buns by the ladies who were selling them in the streets, using it as a little bit of a gimmick to sell them, crying hot cross buns, sort of fresh out of the oven, trying to sell them to all of the people around them. And actually, that's where we get the rhyme from too. You see, you might know the rhyme, 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. That's because the ladies that were selling them in the street would sell 1 large hot cross bun for 1 penny, or 2 small hot cross buns for 1 penny. Now, the most characteristic thing about hot cross buns is the cross on the top. Now, you might know it as having a white cross on the top of it, which is formed by white strips of pastry being laid across the top of the bun. But actually, most hot cross buns throughout history have been made with carving a groove into the top of the dough in the shape of a cross. And there was a reason for this. You see, right back to the medieval times, we know that they thought by putting a cross on the top of the bun, they would ward away all of the evil spirits that could take hold of the dough and make it go mouldy faster. So by putting a cross on the top, they were protecting their food, keeping it for longer. And actually, it became known as a bit of a good luck charm in the kitchen. Some people even hung them around the side of the kitchen to keep their kitchen running well. So hot cross buns have really varied history to them. And of course, they're still very popular today. So what I've got here is the dough already made. I'll split it into smaller pieces to make the actual individual hot cross buns and put the cross in it before it goes in the oven. But what I thought I'd do now is actually run through the ingredients that we've used. And the ingredients
There we go. That just gives a bit of history. Mia's going to do the cooking, but it tells you a bit of the background, which I think is always good to sort of know the framing and story. So over to you, Mia.
Hi. So I want to start with the ingredients first. The first part of it is to you want to hydrate your yeast, and we're using a dry yeast because that's what's readily available to everyone. When you're hydrating a yeast, the yeast is actually dead yeast on the outside and live yeast on the inside. When you hydrate it, you're taking the dead yeast to allow the live yeast to come up and do its work. You want to always warm your liquid that you're going to hydrate your yeast with, because the warmth promotes the yeast to be active. It likes to be in a good environment. The other thing we're adding to the milk and the water is the sugar, and the sugar feeds the yeast to get very active. It's just like when you have sugar, you want to go run and go crazy because you have so much energy in you. So you want to put the sugar and the yeast inside your liquid, and then you want to let this sit for about 20 minutes to get it to hydrate and let it start doing its thing. Once it has been hydrated, it looks like this. It's really foamy on the top and the water's on the bottom. Okay. Then we're going to take all our ingredients. So this is the water, the milk, and the yeast. And then we have whole wheat flour and regular hard or bread flour. The bread flour itself gives you a lot of gluten to help the structure hold better. But the yeast, because it's low gluten, it kind of gives you a softer texture to your bread. So we're going to start off with those. And we want to mix that with our dough hook. Usually the first minute and a half is allowing your dry ingredients, which is your flours, to hydrate. When water touches the flour, the starches in the flour start developing the gluten in the flour itself. So it's starting the process of developing the structure for your bread. So we're going to put this on our mixer, and we're going to do about a minute and a half. So you don't want to, so the next ingredient that we're going to add to it is salt. Salt is added for flavor in anything that you're making, baking or cooking. The thing with yeasted products is that the salt actually hinders the action of the yeast. So you have to, I like to put it in about after a minute and a half so that the yeast are nicely established and they're doing their job already. Once you add salt, it starts slowing the process down. So you want to do this as it's after it started getting active. You want to make sure that your dough is getting hydrated well. So if it's not picking up because your dough is very dry, you can see my dough. You want to make sure that you push all of the ingredients so that they're getting hydrated properly, and then you're going to continue to mix. I've got 2 eggs. Sorry, that's why it's there. There's 2 eggs also in there. Sorry, I got excited with the walks because I love the ravines and the ravine talk. It's so interesting. Okay. Once you add the egg, it'll start to absorb more liquid. And once the flour is more hydrated, you can increase the speed. So now it's hydrated. I'm going to add my salt. And I'm going to increase the speed. And now I want to develop the gluten. So I'm going to let this run for at least about 5 minutes before I stop. And for me, I want to check the development by pulling the dough and stretching it to see how the gluten is developed. So the next ingredient we're going to add is the butter. But as like salt, adding a fat to yeast slows them down. It's like when you have a heavy meal, you don't want to go running, you just want to sit and do nothing, right? So it's the same thing. A yeast is a microorganism, and basically if it's still something that needs food, it still acts like a actual being where it's fed, it needs nourishment, and it grows as it in a good environment. I'm going to increase the speed now so it'll catch a bit better. Increase the bowl down again. So this is also the point where you're going to check and see if you need to add more flour or if you need to add a bit more water. And if it's too dry, then you're going to add a little bit more water. But if it's too wet, you're going to just add a little bit of flour to help bind it together to create your dough. And you're actually trying to get it to cleanup stage. So cleanup stage is when the dough starts coming away from the bowl. And cleaning up the bottom of the bowl. So now you're gonna check after about 2 or 3 minutes to see how the gluten is developing in your dough. So one of the things that shows you how to check the development of your dough is pulling the dough to the point where it holds its shape still as you pull it, but also you can see through it when you pull it. So I'm going to take a piece of the dough. Okay. And if I pull the dough and I can pull it enough without it breaking, then I know I can add my fat. And this is called a window test, the window pane test. So it's breaking right now, so we're gonna mix it a little bit longer. But if it holds its shape enough, like see how I just folded it once, that means it just needs about probably 30 seconds. But see how you can see through this membrane of the dough? That's how you know it's almost done. So I'm gonna do another half a minute to a minute. thing with your butter, it should be at room temperature so that it can emulsify into your dough well. And if you can see, I'm going to pull it and it's not tearing. You can see through it without it tearing. So we're going to start adding our butter now. And butter now, it's really strange. They've actually started to begin to add palm oil to butter. So then when it's at room temperature, this butter has been outside since yesterday. I can't even it's not soft anymore. So the fat content in butter now has changed because of what they've been feeding their the cows, and the cows milk now has a higher fat content. So the fat is more stable when it's at room temperature. Every once in a while, you are going to try and get the fat doesn't want to incorporate it into your dough. So you're going to have to always scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure that it's getting in the dough and not just sticking to the walls of the bowl. And once your dough, you can't see the fat anymore, and the dough is very uniform in texture, is the time that you're going to add your candied fruits. And our candied fruits today are sultanas, raisins, candied ginger, and apricots. And then we also have candied orange zest. I'm going to add that in. So at this point, you're just trying to incorporate all your inclusions into the dough so that the dough holds the inclusion. Once your dough has taken all the inclusion, you're gonna turn out your dough and you're gonna round it up and let it sit and ferment for about 45 minutes. Okay. My dough. When you turn out your dough, you want to lightly dust the table. You never want to add too much flour to your dough. The more flour you add to your dough when you are rolling or processing your dough will toughen your dough. So you want to be very minimal when you are dusting the table. And usually, if I don't want to put it on any more flour, I will actually wet my hand so that I can handle the dough without it sticking. Okay. And then what you're trying to do now is to create a skin to capture all of the CO2 that the yeast is going to make. And basically you're just turning the dough on under itself so that the outer layer is nice and tight and creating a skin. So it's nice and smooth. Once you have a nice smooth skin, you're gonna place it in a greased bowl and you're gonna let it sit for 45 minutes. Okay. After 45 minutes, or at the point where the dough has doubled, you're gonna take your dough and you're gonna divide your dough into 80 gram pieces. So I have another dough here and you can see how this one's a double batch, but it's like tripled in size. It's been sitting longer than I was hoping for, but it's okay. And basically you wanna dump your dough onto your table and you wanna deflate the dough from all the large air pockets that's developed, because you don't want to have huge air pockets in your hot cross buns. So we're going to lightly dust the top And now we're gonna divide the pieces into 80-gram pieces. I'm gonna put them in a pan, this pan for now, and I'm just gonna do 6 for you. So you're gonna divide it. I usually take strips first. And once I get the strip, I'm gonna cut my 80-gram pieces. And you usually, when you're making any doughs like this, there's always resting time, because every time you work the dough, you're forming gluten. And the more gluten you develop, the more dense and tough it gets. So you always want to let it rest so that you can have this elasticity to be able to pull your dough and work your dough nicely without overworking it, okay? Okay, so that's, so now you want to, you basically want to now form your dough. So you're gonna take, you wanna let these rest for at least 10 minutes. And after your 10 minutes, you're gonna take your dough and you're gonna turn it over and basically take the edges and fold them in, okay? You're now creating another tighter skin in these smaller balls so that the smaller ones have the same tension on the surface of your ball. And usually we like to round it up on the table just to tighten it. And it's kind of hard to explain to you, but you basically, if you don't know how to do the rounding with your single hand, it's actually just pulling your dough towards you without too much flour. And what you're doing is every time I pull it, I'm actually sealing the bottom so that it actually has a very tight seal. And then when I get a smooth surface, I'm gonna pinch this to close it so that it's still holding all this, the CO2 that the yeast is producing. And then we want to give them at least good enough space in your container. Okay. And then after you've rounded this up, you want to cover it with either a tea towel, or you can put saran wrap on it, and then the saran wrap will help protect it from getting a skin. And then you want to rest it again for about at least another 45 minutes, or as long as it's double in size, okay? So once it's doubled in size, which are these ones here, you can see how they've expanded quite a bit. You're going to take egg wash, which is just one egg yolk, a teaspoon of milk, and a pinch of salt. And you want to give them a first layer of egg wash. Okay, once you do that, you'll go back and do a second layer so that you get a really nice caramelization on the top of the hot cross bun. And I know a lot of people do the cross with the paste, but I don't like the paste. I usually let these bake and get the nice roundness and an even color all the way through. And once it's completed, I actually put a royal icing on the top that's been flavored with cinnamon and cardamom, because when you put cinnamon into the bread itself, it's a antifungal ingredient, so it actually may kill your yeast, and then it will not puff up, and you'll get dense hot cross buns, and I don't want that at all. So I'd rather have that flavor in my icing versus it being in my dough, so that I know that my dough will proof really well. And most people who are bakers would prefer not to put cinnamon and cardamom inside your dough. It's usually when you roll it out and you sprinkle it inside the dough or on the outside of dough. It's never usually inside, for the fear that it will kill your yeast, and then the yeast won't do its job. I have my oven at 350. I've preheated it, and it usually, so we've been baking it 15 minutes, and then we turn it, and then another 8 to 12 minutes until you get an internal temperature of 190 degrees Fahrenheit or 90 degrees Celsius. So to get that reading, you always want to have an instant read thermometer. So I'm going to pop these in the oven. I have and I bought a really cheap kind of instant read thermometer from Walmart. This was about $12.99, but this ensures me that when I'm baking my breads, that if I get that read inside the bread, that the bread is always cooked. So you want to bake it for, now I'm going to put it for 15. Once it's baked, then we're going to do two things to it. So you're going to want to make a simple syrup first. And my simple syrup is just usually one part by weight of water and 1 part of sugar. So if you're going to make 100 grams of water, you're going to put 100 grams of sugar. You want to bring that to a boil, and then you'll get a simple syrup like this. It's quite thick, but one of the secrets that French chefs actually do as their pastries come out of the oven, they will brush this liquid on their end product to give it a beautiful shine. The second thing we're going to do is create a royal icing. So this royal icing is just basically 250 grams of icing, a gram of cardamom, a gram of cinnamon, and 40 grams of a liquid. So it could be milk, it could be water, it could be orange juice. As long as you have the 40 grams of water to liquefy it, then you're going to have a nice fluidity to do your proper piping. When the hot buns come out, so I'll show you them here. They are very nice and hot, but you want to make sure that once they come out of the oven, you're going to take your syrup and you're going to brush them to give them not only a shine, but also a dousing of liquid to help the moisture inside. After you've put the syrup, you want to let it dry out so that you can actually put the icing. So this is one that's been sitting for a while. And you're going to take your icing right here, and you're going to put it in a piping bag. And then you're going to ice the buns with a cross. So usually you just want to do, I always go all the way across to as many as I can do. And then before you serve, you want to just let them harden so that that cross stays on it. Okay. So once they're nice and hardened, you have these. And these are your finished hot cross buns. So if you have any questions for me, I would take questions right now if you'd like.
Beautiful. I'll just remove the spotlight so we can see people. And do people want to, do you have any questions of Mia? And we can send that recipe to people. And boy, that made it all look so easy. Jen, over to you. What question do you have?
Yeah, Mia used a dough hook.
Yep.
And how long would that take if you didn't have a dough hook?
So if you're going to do it by hand,
yeah.
Usually it takes about 20 minutes to get the gluten developed to the point where you can pull it and see through it.
And would you knead it like you would bread? Would that be?
Yep.
Yeah.
It would just be taking the bread, the dough itself, and just giving a knead like this until you get the gluten developed. So you're just pulling and pressing it into the dough until it comes together. And when you take the dough and you can pull it like this, see how I'm being able to pull it to get it thin? This is the way you're gonna test it to make sure that you can see through it without it breaking.
Okay, okay. So about 20 minutes then.
Roughly 20 minutes. Yeah, it's a good workout after.
Very
Thank you.
And any other questions? Judy.
Well, it seems like a lot of work, and I give you a lot of credit for doing that. That's amazing.
You should
Thank
see
you
how
so
many
much.
we made today. We made so many today. We did
I'd like
like
to live
10
near
dozen.
you.
Oh.
I'd like to live near you and come again.
If you know John Joseph, then anytime we have for sure.
So Judy, we're delivering to those who want some. Do you want some?
Sure.
Okay, well, I'll put you on the list. Okay, okay,
well, thank you.
Okay,
they're beautifully soft and really fluffy buns. So I just think that you should give them a chance, because I don't know if you've had really good fresh hot cross buns. Hot cross buns that are made on the same day are really fantastic.
They're to die for. Yes, I see.
Yeah.
Peter McNaughton has a question. Then Gary. Peter.
No, I just want to say I wanted some hot cross buns, please.
I'll add to the list, Peter. Okay, great. Okay. I thought you would have added your name to the list. Okay, Peter. Okay, so Peter McDonald, and then Gary. You have a question. You're muted, Gary. Gary, you're muted. No, you're still muted. Okay.
Here we go. You mean you're not reading lips today?
Okay, good.
No, you did answer my question. You said they were fluffy and tasty.
Oh, yeah.
Lydia always has that comment, I'm going to taste it for you. And she tells us how wonderful all her food is. And I'm sure yours is as well. I liked your presentation.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Fabulous, fabulous. Very tempting, very tempting. Now, any other questions from people? No,
Where can we get the recipe?
So I think, now, Mia, you sent me a recipe and then we're going to send it to people, right?
Yeah, I'm going to revise it because we didn't add the icing on it. So I have it in my computer, and I'll send you the one with the icing so you can use the icing too, for sure.
So Debbie, I have your email, so I'll send it to you too, okay?
Okay, perfect.
Very good.
You.
It was an interesting fact about cinnamon being an antifungal. I didn't know that. So it's a preservative, an ancient preservative.
Yeah, it's but it kills the yeast, right? It's
right,
not,
of course, yeah. Yeah,
it's
but
awful. People don't want to put it in, and you'll see if you've never made a dough and you're like, oh, I want to have it really cinnamony, the dough won't rise and you'll get really dense product, and it's just hard. So that's maybe one of the reasons why, if you've ever made anything with cinnamon and yeast, you got a dense product. It's usually the cinnamon killed the yeast, right?
But you remind me, some Middle Eastern cultures and other cultures use cinnamon on their meat.
Yes.
The savory, and so that would be a natural then why they would do that. Wow, what a learning moment. I love that. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And Susan, do you want to bid us a farewell and tell us who we have for next week?
I don't have my notes for next week, but
okay, we actually have 1 second. I just had it in front of me. There we are. It's Jenny Blackbird.
Oh, wonderfully, yes. She's an amazing person, and certainly I really suggest you show up. She's just a wonderful person. She's been at Manor Road for some of our celebrations, and I hope you enjoyed the talk today and follow up and join us next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mia. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
You.
Take care.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much. This was amazing.